Welcome to How I See It with me, Mark Pratt, and
Justin Sternberg. This is a podcast that works to counter cultural polarization through thoughtful conversations.
it's interesting to recognize that what we offer is just a snippet.
Yeah.
But yet, as we have these conversations, it's like my mind continues to ruminate in some ways and say, okay, where's that come from? How come this happens? Or why do I see it this way? Or, oh wow, we really didn't even get into the neural pathways that are created. Those kind of things. And you recognize how complex certain words are.
Which word?
Well, you think of humor and it's like, okay, it's just being able to tell a joke.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But then as you talk about it for 45 minutes, you recognize how it's developed over time. You recognize how you learn it out in age-appropriate manners. And the other part, and maybe part of where I'm is the word power. It's like I not even necessarily feeling that we can. It's so complex. You feel inadequate to basically take one word and describe it in such a way that it covers all the nuances.
Right. Especially in 45 minutes.
Yes.
We just scratched the surface.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think part of that is the ability to be able to say, okay, yeah, well, at least we scratched the surface, and other people who might hear, who might continue to listen, can take that and say, okay, I hadn't thought about it like that. Because I think that's what this is between you and I, because like even in that ability to say, in that the humor podcast, sarcasm.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't have necessarily the same definition
perspective
for
on
it.
what that was, right?
Yeah. So to be able to have that conversation that says, okay, this is how I see sarcasm. Sarcasm. This is how I see power. This is how I see God. This is how I see, family, wife.
Yeah, and talking again back to sarcasm, to get to a closer version of the truth, right? Like in that conversation, it's like there's nuance to sarcasm, and recognizing that sometimes when I use the word sarcastic or sarcasm, some people will immediately hear that to my kids. I say, "Oh, great job.
Yeah.
Way to go." And it's like, no, I would never condone that. That's certainly not humor to me.
Right.
And but just that nuance and understanding that every word is loaded, and for every person, and sometimes we get so offended both ways, right?
Sure.
Sometimes we're offended at their use of a certain word, and like obviously they're this then, right?
Oh, sure.
And it's because our perspective of sarcasm is that way, one way, and then sometimes we can get offended, like, how dare you say I'm like that to my kids? I would never do that. You just said you do that, right? Like, and this give and take, where the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? Like,
yeah, and I guess it's, I'm not trying to make it relative, but I think that's where unearthing, mining and being able to wrestle with, okay, where does this come from? And is it true? Is it, is this a bent? Is it a generational thing that I've just learned as true, and yet I need a pattern to help me understand what straight really is.
Yeah.
Versus being bent.
Yeah.
In a certain fashion.
I like that word, bent. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of the words we use bring a personal bent to them. Mm-hmm. That we don't even always. It's part of that. As we develop our vocabulary, I look at things, almost like they're the schemas, if you will, the little pictures that we have that represent all of those words in our mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, it's in some ways, I think this is about rewriting. Mm-hmm. Or, redrafting some of those pictures, those schemas that we have that say, okay, this is what power looks like. This is what, and I think that's what makes even that word, if you will, power. It's like it's going to depend on what my experience has been with power. You follow me? It's like, is it a point where I've grown up where might makes right? Because that's a bent.
Yeah.
Or is it a matter of where I've come out of an abusive home or situation and I will never have power, or I can never attain.
Power represents danger.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. But yet, even in hurt people, it's something that I desire to attain. I want to get me some of that someday. When I grow up, nobody's ever going to do that to me. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I just bring this bent, into that view of what power is. And I think that's what makes it, complicated.
Yeah, because if you think about it in terms of it being danger, right? Like as a young person dealing with abuse in one way or another, power represents danger. And like you said, when I get old, I want to be the danger.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to ever experience that feeling again. I want to be on top.
Yeah.
I want to be the danger. Because in that spectrum, that's the safe side.
Sure.
Right?
Yes. I view that as the safe side, and to allow people to hurt me, and not in an abusive sense, but in the aspect of being wronged. I think that's the danger there, is because I can never allow myself to be wronged. When I have that viewpoint.
Mm-hmm. Because it represents getting back to that other side.
Yes, it represents that part of my life when I was powerless.
Yep.
Now I'm perceiving that I have something in this form of power. So anything that represents that prior powerlessness becomes very confusing, and it's almost scary. Yeah. Reactive is the word I was going to use.
Yeah.
And I think, for me, even how our culture has defined words, what does power look like? I think, we can look at it from a, political, we can look at it from an ethnic, we can look at it from a gender, perspective, and say, well, that's not right, or, I need some of that. And I think the attainment of it is empty.
Yeah. Yeah, tipping the scales still means the scales are off balance, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm processing what you said in that tipping the scales, and that's not to say that the scales are always balanced either. And sometimes, they probably need to be tipped. But yet, tipping for the sake of tipping versus truth, and being able to define, things, words, and say, okay, what does that mean to you? What is that? And I think even there again with the word power versus the word powerless, if you will, two sides of a scale. Mm-hmm. On one end of the continuum, I'm the king.
Yeah.
Authoritative end of the scale. And then on the passive or powerless end of the scale, it's like that can be a negative thing.
Yeah, I'm in the dungeon of the castle.
Yes.
The other side of that equation, yeah.
Yes.
When reality is closer to us being both.
Yes.
Right? And I think about Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist who...
He came to mind earlier as well.
Did he?
Yeah.
He got put in a prison camp, Nazi prison camp.
Yeah.
Endured insane, difficulties, right? And, after he wrote some books and wrote some stuff, but one of the things he basically said is that he has the power to decide his response to a situation, right?
Sure.
And so in between stimulus and response, we have the power to choose what our response is. In other words, input doesn't have to equal output.
Sure.
I can step in the middle there and choose. And so in his context, it was, I can let them steal my freedom. Sure. I can let them steal my power. I can let them have what they believe they're taking from me.
Yes.
Or I don't have to. You may have me locked in a cage, but I still have my freedom.
Yes.
I can think what I want. I can, within the confines of what this cage, I can do what I want. Like, you can't change me from the inside out. You don't have that power.
Exactly.
And I think, so I think about
that person, that individual is never powerless at that point.
Right.
That's the beauty of it.
That's the beauty of the dichotomy, right? They're both true. You will always have that power. In an abusive relationship, you'll always have the power to say, no, I won't endure this, and take your steps towards the door or whatever. Now, of course, I don't want to simplify this too much.
Nope, I hear you.
I understand that. Yeah.
You're sensitive to those who are in abusive situations.
Right. I understand it's not always that simple. But I just want to say, like, we always have power. We don't have to give it away.
Sure.
And then on the flip side, we're always powerless. We can walk out the door and a tree could fall on us, right? Or I could get in a car and, like I talked about my friend earlier, get in a car and get in a car accident, get out of my car after the accident, get hit by another car. And did I plan that? Is that within my power to control? Of course not.
Or your power to avoid.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I'm completely powerless to that. And in any given point, I may feel a relationship is at a certain state where another person doesn't. And I'm powerless to control other people's thoughts.
Sure.
Other people's behaviors, other people's interactions with me. But I'm fully powerful in how I respond back to them. Or I'm not, because I gave it up, right? And that's where reactivity comes into play versus... But just the reality is so nuanced, and it's a dichotomy that we're always powerful and we're always powerless. And understanding that balance is so important, right?
Yeah, and it I think for me personally, that's a view that has been learned over time as well. Because I don't think in who I was as a young teenager, young man, it's like I think I was desiring that power. It's like nobody ever, grows up desiring to be, the abused person.
Right.
Right. We want to be black belts. We want to be, football players, or and granted, I'm saying this as a male, it's like, but even females, even other individuals, I don't think anybody desires to lose what power they have. But yeah, I'm also recognizing that as I attain, more abilities, I'll say, there is more responsibility that goes along with that. So as I'm offered opportunity or power, however you want to describe it, I think there's a responsibility that goes along with that. And it's something that I can share. It's something that I can give away, in sense that says it's okay. Follow me in the sense that I don't have all the answers, and I too am powerless in these situations. And I think, that is a learning that comes with time, is to be able to recognize that, yes, I am powerless. I can't, short of my ability to, my heart to beat, my lungs to breathe, I can't generate any more air, than I currently can. That kind of thing.
And you're dependent on your lungs doing what they do.
Exactly.
You're not deciding.
Exactly.
Right.
And that, and there are many things like that happen.
Yeah.
That I am powerless over.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I'd say. By God's grace.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And that's where, that's where we miss how much power is God, right? Like,
sure.
And again, I'm not waking up every morning saying, okay, lungs, remember, you got to do this. And, knees, make sure you move this way, not that way.
Exactly.
Like, all these things. And I'm not, reminding, my legs how to locomote, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Is that a word?
Yes, I'm good with it.
It is now.
It is
Webster. Right? Like, I'm not making these conscious decisions, and, also, like, I'm not telling the boards above me to not cave and fall in on me. I'm not telling, the meteors to stop hitting the earth, or avoid us, right? Somebody is. And that's where we miss it. Like, believers, atheists alike, something's keeping it all together. The Bible says, in him we live and move and have our being, right? Like,
sure.
There's a power that we have access to that's beyond ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And I think we can talk about, our personal power all day long, but if we miss that, then we're missing the most important capability that we have on this earth, which is to tap into the supernatural power, right?
Sure. So I'm gonna ask Justin, how much are you thinking about CR at this moment while we're having this conversation?
It's a good question. So the joke so the second lesson of Celebrate Recovery, the first lesson is denial. Because until you get a denial, there's no moving forward. But the second lesson is powerless.
Stop with denial for just a moment, though. Isn't that to a great degree what we were talking about with that abuse of power? Or, you know what I mean? That I can on my own.
Yes.
I have this power.
I can do it.
Yes.
I can quit anytime, Mark.
That's right. You just don't understand. I can quit anytime I decide to. I want to.
Yep.
Although I've had this same pattern in my life for 60 years.
Yeah.
But I can decide anytime I want to. That in and of itself would be denial.
Denial, yep.
Not a river in Egypt, as they say, but yeah.
Well, and denial comes in so many flavors. In like we were just talking about power being a dichotomy.
Yeah.
You can have denial that you're powerless, but you can also have denial that you have power. You have responsibility. You should choose a different response, right? Like, and so a lot of times denial is coming in the form of like, I can't do anything about it. I'm powerless over this situation. It's like, well, you could put your shoes on and walk out the door. Or you could just not drive into that parking lot, right? Sure. Or you could call that person who said, call me anytime you need because I know, whatever, I know you need some support. You could pick up the phone and call that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could put meetings in place in your life where every Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning, in our case, I'm at this place at this time meeting with this person.
Yep.
Because I know it's going to be an accountability situation for me.
Sure.
You know, and so denial comes in both forms of I have all the power, I don't need anyone's help, and I don't have any power and I can't control anything, and you know.
Yeah.
Denial covers all of that ground, you know.
Yep. And I think that's where it's this ability to learn, because I do I think power is multifaceted, because I may have power in this realm, but I may feel powerless in this realm.
Yeah.
I may feel powerless over my finances, depending on where I'm at, or I may feel I may be on that verge of I'm trying to not sacrilegious, but where I think I know it all where religion is concerned. There's a word for that, but yeah, you know, in a spiritual realm, you know, I got it all figured out. You know, there isn't a, you know, so I think that's the multifaceted part, you know, because some areas it may be comfortable for me. Other areas aren't going to be comfortable for me to recognize that dichotomy between power and powerless. But yet, back to Victor, our buddy Victor, you know, it's like, am I that far in either direction? And yes, I still have a choice to put my shoes on. I still have a choice to open up that book. You know, I still have an opportunity to learn and take baby steps in such a way that says, okay, this isn't how it has to be. This is who I am, but that's not who I have to be.
I'll be honest, I didn't hear the last couple sentences because I'm trying to figure out who our buddy Victor is.
Victor Frankl. Victor Frankl. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, that was just, you know, I was, yes, he had come to mind as you shared.
He is my buddy, I'll give you that.
Yeah? Is he still living?
I don't know.
I don't think he is. Yeah. Concentration camp.
Yeah. He made it out of there.
He did. He wrote some wonderful books.
Yeah. He
is
a
lot
buddy.
Of
I forgot that detail. That's my buddy.
That's okay. Sorry, I lost you there.
You didn't say, like I say. So,
I did not.
So I missed the connection.
I didn't say I hear you either yet, but well.
I hear you.
But that being said, back to we were at the first denial, first area. So going now. Sorry. Now go forward. Yeah. Justin.
So once that's the whole thing is like, again, if you can't step away from yourself and look back and go, where am I missing it?
Yeah.
That's a recognition. That's getting through some denial. If you can't progress. But once you get past that, then the very next thing we put in front of you is, okay, guess what, kid? You're powerless, right? And it's so, I think it's counterintuitive to come to a recovery program and the second thing you hear about is how you're powerless. Because it's like, well, what the flip? How am I supposed to get better? Like, how's this supposed to help me? Well, it's like...
It's offensive.
Yes. It's offensive. And it's also, depending on your paradigm of power, scary.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is it... talking about that person whose power represented danger and I finally got that power and I'm the danger and you're saying I don't have that or I have to... give it up, I don't know if this thing's worth it, right? Like,
yeah, I'm not sure I want to come back here.
Right.
I'm not sure I want to deal with that.
Yeah, and so what we're always trying to encourage people to understand is this is a step-based program, right? And we're not going to leave you here, but it's important to start here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's important to recognize where I am powerless.
It's important to recognize that you are powerless on your own, right?
Yeah.
To dig your way out of the mess you've gotten into.
Yeah.
And recognize that you need help.
Yeah, it's to that point of I need to be able to recognize there is another source of power, or there is the ability to have this power infused into me, because I don't have the ability on my own to generate it.
That's, yeah.
And I think I think it's John 15 where he talks about, he is the vine and we are the branches.
Yeah.
And how that his power is able to flow into us when we recognize we need it as a source. Because all we're doing is basically wilting on the vine by saying, I don't need nurturing. I don't need your power, thank you. I got this. Yeah. And yet I'm wilting on the vine, having all of the resources available to me, all the power, if you will, available to me. I just have to be able to recognize that I'm powerless to be able to do it on my own.
And it's ironic when we have that thought or that, or like when we're just disregarding his power, right? When, again, ironically, if we're like, I don't need that power, thank you. Okay, well, good luck keeping your heart beating.
Yeah.
Good luck keeping that wood above your head from caving in while you sleep. Good luck keeping the meteors away.
Yeah.
And yet, it makes me think of that verse that the Bible says, God is not slow concerning his promise, but he has, I gotta look it up, because I'm gonna butcher it. But he's patient, right?
Sure.
And he's patient with, go ahead. You finished it that one.
Well, no, I'm just saying he's not in a hurry to change us.
Right.
He's able to wait on, the power is always right there.
Yeah.
And it's like plugging into the outlet in the wall.
Yeah.
It's always there.
And I guess the point I was trying to make is his power isn't removed from us because we don't believe it, or else we would wilt.
Sure.
Right? And that's where I was thinking about the Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. In other words, he's not slow to respond to our I guess pride, right? He is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief, as you look forward to the day of God and speed its coming. But the whole thing there is like he's not slow in responding to our arrogance.
Yeah,
he's patient, and it comes from a place of love, and it comes from a place of just wait, because you're gonna come back to this, and you're gonna remember. Remember when I said I don't need your power? Yeah. I now recognize how much I need it, Daily, yes. Yeah. And how much you've granted it to me to so many degrees that I couldn't even fathom before. And I thought it was all just me being independent and powerful on my own. Yeah. But really, you're the one, again, keeping my heart beating. Yeah. Keeping the cars from slamming into me on the highway. Like, I don't have control over all this. You're the one who keeps my spouse loving me, like, because I know me and they shouldn't love me, right? Like, and so I just think, I don't know, that verse came to mind, but his patience, right? Yeah. And I think that slow part in the process, he's not slow in his process. It's our view of him being slow in the process. That's what makes it a step program. Yeah. I have to do my part on the individual steps, and yet it becomes a process. And in our momentary circumstance, we want instantaneous change. So yes, from a view of desiring instantaneous change, just take it away. I don't want to go through the work of having to deal with this. His process is slow. Yep. But yet it's beneficial, and he is patient, and it's not about us being able to, have the power on our own. It's about us being able to recognize that the power is available to us, and his desire is to do it in us
through us. Like we talked about dynamic power.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our word, what was it? Our word for dynamite, you know, that's the word that describes the Holy Spirit, is that dynamo power, but yet we tend to think of it as dynamite. But no, you know, the word for power, you know, in that sense is 2,000 years old versus 200 years old.
Yeah.
So the 200 is, I have the ability to do what needs to be done in you, this dynamic power. It's not just a linear power that blows everything out of the way, because that's what we want.
Right.
Okay, God, slay my enemies.
Right.
But no, he works in my heart in a dynamic way. He doesn't just blow things up. He works in and around and through our circumstances in a dynamic way that no dynamite type power ever could. And I think that's the, you know, when we understand dynamic power versus the dynamite power, you know, that's a powerful thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's so good.
Because he's working in and around and through my circumstances to, in this patient, loving, and kind way that's not just go before me and slay my enemies. It's like, okay, there's a process here. And I can trust you in the process, and you working through me produces change. And I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, and if you are able to reflect, right, and look at the landscape of your life and see how essentially he moved heaven and earth to get you to this moment in time. Again, it takes the ability to see, which he grants, and I think perspective
for such a time as this.
Right. But to be able to see how all those things lined up to put you, like you said, for such a time as this, to put you here right now in this situation to do what you're doing.
With these gifts.
Right. Compare that power to be able to manipulate all those, if you believe in God's sovereignty and how he folds all these pieces of your life together to produce this one result, this one day, right?
Yeah.
Compare that to dynamite power. Like, boom!
Yep.
You know, the face of the mountain's gone, and it's like, that was powerful, but there wasn't a control. There was, you know, where like you said, that dynamic power that he has naturally, you know, is immensely more powerful because it is perfectly controlled.
Sure.
Right?
So as we describe this dynamic power, Justin, I'm going to turn it towards you just a little bit. Can you remember, share, however you want, a time when that dynamic power was just so evident in your personal life? I realize that's a big question.
That is a big question.
I just threw it at you.
Well, I mean, we briefly touched on some of the things when we talked about the Holy Spirit.
Okay.
You recall?
You do your conversation with Megan and that kind of thing? Was that in that one?
Yeah, not necessarily Megan. It was just with certain people where...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, where the results, and even mid-conversation, it was clear, like you said, there's a dynamic power here that's coming from outside of myself. It is an infusing, to use the word you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
The vine is clearly, you know, I'm clearly attached to the vine, and it is flowing through me to the degree where I'm happy to not take credit, but also happy to be the branch that it's flowing through today, right? Like that balance of... so that's the first thing that comes to mind, is just certain conversations or difficult decisions that had to be made that were made easy because of a dynamic power.
Sure.
And where typically that same conversation, that same decision, that same situation would be immensely difficult.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do. I know. And it's funny that as you share, I have a memory comes to my mind. It's like Chris and I, my wife, we built a house in upstate New York prior to moving here. And I can remember in the process of building that house, it was a task. And it was, but yet it was something we felt called to do. It was something that we, we had just looked at houses and, and everything was so expensive. And it's like, crying out loud, we can take these same resources and we can make our own house with this same money or less money than it would cost to buy a house under this market. And so we endeavored, and we had great family support in the whole process. But I just remember, the work that I did just organizing.
Yeah.
Just the not in an arrogant sense, but taking the steps that I needed to take. And I can remember this one morning, and it was just I had prepared to get the shingles on the roof because we were, we had a wedding coming up and we were going to be going away, and I just wanted to be able to get these shingles on the roof, get them down. So, weather, it's a hurdle, when a house is under roof, there's I can breathe. And I remember I was prepped. I'd gotten there early, and I had a boom truck, ready to be able to boom the shingles to the second story, that morning at, 8 o'clock. So I was there. I was pumped. I was ready, just waiting for that boom truck to show up. And it's like phone rings, and flip phone back in those days. I open it up. It's like, the company. Nope, we're not going to be able to get you your shingles today. The boom truck's down. It's like, crap. I'm powerless. Yeah. I can't get mad at them. Things break, Yeah. And it's like, and I hung up the phone, and I just felt defeated.
Yeah.
It's like all this preparation, all this time, and yeah. I looked down the driveway just like 15 minutes later, and a friend of mine, on that Friday morning, he said, I'm not doing anything today. I'll come up and help Mark put his shingles on his roof. And not only did my friend come to help, but my friend owned an auto body shop. And he had a Mustang, and he had a rollback. And he said, he came rumbling up the driveway, and he said, and I told him my story, and he says, well, he says, I was thinking about bringing the Mustang this morning, but it must have been God that told me I needed to bring the rollback. He says, there's no reason we can't drive my truck down to that place, have them load your shingles on, we'll put them all the way to the front, and we can lift the rollback up, and we can get the shingles off the front of the rollback, lift it up onto the porch roof of house. And we were able to shingle that whole front porch, get shingles up on the main roof. And it was just, that was a moment for me when I just understood. I mean, it was a reality for me that there was this power that was so much bigger than my circumstances. And it was in that moment that he desired to make that evident to me. And I just, it's just one of those things in moments when I'm thinking I am powerless, that I can be thankful for that, because just because I am doesn't mean that God is powerless, in that moment. And I think that's where scripture comes into play. In our weakness, he is strong. And he's always strong.
Yes. Yeah.
And so even as I apologize, I threw that question at you that was deep, but it was like, yeah, that moment is one that still comes back to me every now and then when I'm thinking about it. It's like, okay, it's not me. The boom truck's down. What am I supposed to do? It's like, hold on. Just a second.
Help is on the way.
Help has been released already. Yeah, dispatched. Help has already been dispatched. And it's not something that I have to control. And it's not a reflection, or there's nothing wrong with me. It's not a reflection of who I am when I don't have the ability. There's nothing wrong with me. And if anything, it's a part of who I am, and it allows God to be my Father, who basically says, okay, talk with me about that problem. Because, I'm bigger than any of the problems that you have, but you have to do it differently. You can't just do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. You can't take that same problem. What were you thinking? I saw the gears turn in there for a moment. Still,
just as you, they don't stop. No, just as you were sharing that story, I was just trying to think about other times in my life where I felt that. It's a profound sense of he's bigger and he's in control, right? And it's interesting, like, theologically, I transitioned in my late teens, before, a little bit before I got married, I guess maybe college years, from free will and my power to do and accomplish and be righteous and all that, to a much stronger understanding of God's sovereignty.
Sure.
And at the time, I was going to a church, John Piper's church, and John Piper is, he's a modern day theologian who writes about God's sovereignty 24/7, right? Like, it's his passion topic, and so I started to experience a whole nother side, theology of like, oh, he can and will do whether I do or don't, and
whether I can or can't.
Yeah. And there was a distinct shift where all of a sudden it was like the dark, how sometimes some sunglasses, right? They're very dark.
Yep.
And they're only good in a very specific circumstance. Like, you're staring in the sun, you're on a dune in the Sahara, and like, those are the right
you're welding.
Right, exactly. But every other time it's like, these are overkill,
Yeah.
And it felt like taking those off.
Oh, wow.
And looking at the situations around me. And my car would break down and I'd go, oh, you got this. You wanted this to happen. You're in control. All right. What do you got for me today? What does this mean? Like, how can I, and it was like, for a good couple of years, I would say, it felt like it was that clear. Whenever anything would go wrong, it used to be, what am I doing wrong? How were my sins catching up to me?
Sure.
And it transitioned to, oh, okay, I bet you got something in this, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it is.
Yeah.
And just a complete shift there, and a trust, right? And, it's been a while, 20 years. Yeah. Since that moment, and it's not that clear anymore. Like, I put some glasses back on. Really? I would say they're not as dark. But because of that time, the proof was given to me. And so now, even though I don't feel it like I felt it then, like, it would just be this profound feeling of like, cool, like, what are we going to do here? Like, God, like, let's see what he's got planned. I was given the gift of the truth, the proof. And so now I carry that with me, and I still know that's true. The feelings don't always come for free. But it's like, I know there's something to this. I know he's in control.
It's interesting you use those words interchangeably. I feel this and I know.
Well, they're not interchangeable.
Well, that's the interesting part of it, is how much of it is something we can tend to think. This is another podcast in itself. Yeah. The difference between our thinking and our feeling, and how the two tend to interact, positively or negatively.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when I think our tendency is to say, when I feel God,
right,
he's close.
Right.
But if I don't feel God, in this moment, I've sinned and he's far away. You follow me?
Yep.
And so when you used it, it just clicked in my head when you were talking about the feeling and then what we know.
Yeah.
I think that's another podcast.
Yeah. And that's been a life journey effort for me to understand the difference and allow them to be different, separate, but equal. And
I think that's important, though, when we recognize how power comes into play. Mm-hmm. What I think about power, how I feel when I may feel powerless. You know, I think that's another topic for another time. So yeah, and I while you were sharing, I did think self-righteous was the word that I was looking for. Yeah. Before, but still, I just appreciate you sharing that perspective of how the glasses have come off, and that they came, but now they're back on to a certain degree in that process. And I didn't mean to completely derail that with the thinking and the feeling, but I think it's important to recognize how much power is available through Christ, even if I'm not necessarily feeling it in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I was saying too about just the proof was given to me. Yes. And so now I can hold on to that as truth, as something I know. The feelings have faded. They're not as freely given to me, right? Like, oh, I just trust. It's like, I know that I can trust. I don't feel it. It feels like this is, like you're doing the wrong thing, God, Yeah. But I know the truth. And so, and I think that, it's good. Yeah. We should talk about feelings versus thinking at some point, because that's something you challenged me on when we first met. I would say, I feel like this, and you say, do you feel that or do you think that? Yeah. Right? Like, that was kind of like my I say, right?
Yeah, it probably was. It probably was.
I feel like I don't say that as often now, so.
Yeah.
You can see you're missing the little the eye twitch that Mark's giving you.
The twinkle in the eye, as Justin said, was either referring to his kids before. So any closing thoughts?
Nope.
That's fair enough. Well, this is how we see it.
Hey, thank you for listening to our podcast. If you like How I See It, please do all the things that podcasts tell you to do. Subscribe, rate, review, follow us, and or talk nicely about us on social media. If you want to reach out, the email is us@howiseeit.click. Yep, I said .click, as in .click. Please tell your friends about this show, and we'll see you on the next one.